Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video, I thought I'd review the Mariana Trench game. I already know how to play the game. I've already played the game at least once. And it's really fun. It's really enjoyable. Very short, quick game. So for this review, I'm going to be talking about what I really love about the game, the playmat, which is a big part of the reason why I really like the game, and a few other mechanics. And I won't go over the expansion Creatures from the Deep, because I haven't actually played that yet. With the expansion as of yet, but so we won't go over that, but we'll go over the main game, and as well as something else that isn't necessarily part of the main game that I really enjoy. So basically like an extra sort of like modular expansion, little mini expansion if anything. So anyways, let's look at the game. Alright, so here we have the game sort of set up. The mat. Let's talk about what I like about the mat first. So, this is a good place to put the, basically the research cards. This is a good place to put them. There's a spot right here below the Moria Eel. I think that's what this is for all these research cards. They're going to go right here in the setup. Technically, if you didn't have the mat, I think they'd probably go like right here. But because we have the play mat, I think that's what this is for. Now, I like to keep these rivet tokens here and these research tokens here further down below the trench floor card. Because when you're moving your submarine down, you definitely want space. You definitely want to have space for it. And if the research tokens were here in the way, obviously that could be annoying. So I prefer having the research tokens down here. In the setup, they were actually further up, sort of in the way. So yeah, I think it works better for the tokens to be further down. But I like that there's space below the card on the playmat. So that way you could technically put the research tokens and these tokens here, the what's it called? What are they called again? I just forgot. Rivet tokens. Yes, popped rivet tokens. Sorry. Anyways, so the popped rivet tokens, which I haven't actually come across yet, because you see, whenever there's a cephalopod attack, which is like octopus, squid, whenever those animals attack, what's going to happen is you're going to get one of these popped rivet tokens, okay? And they are basically going to deduct 2 research points from your score. So you don't want to get too many of these. Now, there's ways you can protect yourself from a cephalopod attack, but, or cephalopod attack. So that's at least nice. But since I played the game, my first game, I didn't come across a single giant squid or single giant octopus. But I was playing solo mode, and the AI, known as the shrimp here, they did come across it, but the way the AI works is very different from how I work. So they basically ignore all cephalopod attacks. So that's, how they work. Anyway, so they encountered one giant squid, and I was able to avoid damage, obviously. But I really like how the playmat gives you plenty of space here on the right and the left. There's a reason why they made it so that way you have the research cards which have all this deep sea, all the sea creatures that you're going to come across. There's a reason why they only utilize this middle space and they just have this here open like it is. Because you see, as you play the game, your submarine, which I think is also pretty cool that the reason why they're double-sided like this is depending on what side you're playing on is what side your submarine will be pointing. That's why they're double-sided. But what I really like, why they have so much space here, is because you see, when you collect sea creatures, they're going to go onto the right of your submarine, and there's going to be a little segment of it sticking out. which will take up a little extra space in this direction. But what will actually take up even more space is as you discover sea creatures, you're going to be upgrading your submarine. And so it's going to get probably maybe even this long. And so you're going to be utilizing pretty much the entire playmat at some point on each side. So I think that's really cool that they did it that way. So that way you'd have plenty of space for your submarine as you descend and ascend. So that was really smart. Now, of course, once you get down to here, I guess you'd have to move these out of your way if you really wanted to be more efficient and just put these somewhere else to the side while you collect your research tokens at the trench floor. But even though that you may want to go to the trench floor and collect some research tokens, you actually get a lot more points on the sea creatures that you find and are able to pick up and hold. Now, what's really interesting is when you do get a research token, and when you do get a sea creature and put it in your submarine's hold, you don't get any of the score for what that might be, as well as the research token that you grabbed, until you have ascended all the way to the research ship at the very top, and then you take a turn unloading and recharging your sub. Now, unloading would be like unloading your sea creatures to this location, or if you're on this side, to this location, so you know what creatures are going to score you points. You're also going to use the creatures to upgrade your submarine. So if you're using the sea creatures to upgrade your submarine, they won't go here, meaning they won't count towards your score, which is why I think that's great that they have a couple of spaces that you could put your sea creatures if you wanted to right here on the playmat. That's really cool. Of course, as your ship gets bigger with the upgrades, you might still have to move them, to the left and to the right out of the way. But still, that's pretty cool that they have that. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. What else do I like about the game? Well, obviously, the manta rays in the game, and there's so many other sea creatures that are involved with the game. I really like that. There's also the possibility of a cephalopod attack, which is a giant octopus or giant squid, and you get these, and of course, they will deduct research points at the end of your game. So not getting them is obviously something you don't want to do. You don't want to get them. But there is a way to protect yourself. Your ship is equipped with basically an electrical charge, and you always have one electrical charge on your submarine. And so, if you do encounter a giant squid or a giant octopus, and you have one of these tokens, you can use it to protect yourself from the attack, which I think is really smart and cool. Now, of course, if you're unlucky enough to, like, let's say you decide you're going to go all the way down here, you're going to take your turn, it might take a couple of turns to reach the bottom. But as you go down, you're going to encounter sea creatures. Maybe you only encounter one cephalopod, which attacks you, right? And then you use the charge to protect yourself, right? But then as you ascend, you could also encounter one on your way up as well, and now you don't have your your electrical charge token, and so now you are going to get one of these tokens. So that is a possibility, but it's not something I came across, thankfully, on my first game. So that was awesome. I also won by a lot of points, and that's because the way the AI works is they focus on trying to get research tokens, and once they get 4 and reach and ascend to the research vessel, the game is over. And so, and when they ascend, they don't see any sea creatures on the way up. They skip that phase of the game. They do not encounter any of them. And so they don't get nearly as many of the sea creatures as you're going to get. And so if you really want to beat the AI and have a really good score, then you're going to want to, if you're playing solo, you're going to definitely want to mostly focus on these. You still want to get some of these if you can. I got 3. 2 or 3 is a pretty good number. I think you could do really well for yourself if you just went after 2 research tokens and then tried to focus on trying to grab as many of these as possible, so that way you can score the highest amount of points. Now, I went for 3 research tokens, and I scored a total of 13 points at the end of the game, and this is how many, this is basically your roster of how good you are, depending on how many points you get at the end of the game. You also get points deducted from your score for the sea creatures that the AI submarine did find as well. But after you do that, after I did that, I had 13 points. So I'm a marine biology technologist for my first game. But then, for instance, I can still do better. I've still got 2 more possibilities that I could easily get more points, maybe, and be even better at this game. But that basically is pretty good. I'm about moderate for my first game, not bad for my first game. But I think, in all honesty, if you're playing solo, getting these is your best bet. If you're playing 2-player mode, I'd still have to say going after these is also the best you're going to get amount of points-wise. So, regardless, of course, you can just go for some of these, but this is not the object of the game. Collecting these, I don't think is considered the object of the game. It's collecting all the sea creatures that you can find. That's the object of the game, which I think I really enjoy, because that should be the object of the game, is researching all these different animals that you're discovering and you're seeing maybe even for the first time, which I think is really cool. Now, there is one other thing I want to talk about in this review. So, one of the little things they added extra is they added this, a new creature set. So they added some more animals to the game. That doesn't include, obviously, the dinosaurs and stuff like that. But they also added a new upgrade as well. And if you find one of the 4 creatures that have this upgrade, you can upgrade it to your submarine, and then you get this really cool ability that really makes the game even more interesting and more enjoyable for a possibility of getting even more sea creatures. That is really cool. I like that a lot as well. Now, maybe a nitpick of the game is that once you start getting upgrades to your submarine, you're going to definitely be doing a lot of picking up the submarine and fixing your submarine as you go, as you descend and ascend. But that's like a minor nitpick, because there's still plenty of room, and it's not a huge amount of cards. You'll at most, if you're playing with the bioluminescence upgrade, you'll at most have only 4 upgrades anyway. So it's going to extend probably to about here, and then you'll at most, at any given time, at most have 2 small sea creatures in your hold, or 1 large one. So it's not going to extend a huge amount in this direction, at least. So at least you're going to be limited to a maximum of 6 cards that are going to be part of your submarine. And then, of course, once you do ascend all the way to the highest level here, up to the research ship, you get to unload your research token if you have one, and unload your sea creatures in your hold. So I think the game itself is really enjoyable. Obviously, what you might encounter is completely random, which is still pretty good nonetheless. These charge tokens obviously are awesome to have, because once you go back up to the ship, if you did end up using your electrical charge, as you're taking a turn up here unloading your animals, you can charge up your ship. So that means you get this back, which is cool. I like that. But yeah, I think this game is really great. A 10 to 15 minute game. I think solo is even shorter than multiple player, for sure. Solo is definitely shorter, but 10, 15 minutes, I mean, that's honestly how long this game is. It might be a 20-minute game on your first game, maybe. But once you've learned the game itself, 10, 15 minutes is definitely the correct amount of time that this game is going to take. And I think the really cool thing is, obviously, all the different sea creatures. We've got so many. And, of course, the way the game ends, if you're playing a 2-player game, or it might even be if you're playing a... even if you're playing solo, this could happen too. But one of the ways the game will end if you're playing solo, or if you're just playing 2-player, this would also end the game. This would be the main way to end the game. But as you basically add research cards to the depths here, eventually these 3 oxygen tanks are on the very bottom. They'll get drawn. And when the last one is drawn and put, here, it's going to end the game immediately, which makes sense. In a thematic sense, you're running out of oxygen. That'll end the game. Makes sense. You can't research anything if you can't even breathe, right? So that makes sense that the game will end. That's really, really cool, really thought out, very thematic. The oxygen tanks is very thematic. So in a theme sense, the oxygen tanks, that's really thematic. The sea creatures you'll encounter, that's really thematic. I really like that. Upgrading your ship, so that way you can, hold more sea creatures or large sea creatures. That's really cool. I think it was smart, thematically, that your submarine would have a way to protect itself with like a stun upgrade, an electrical charge, possibly, in case you encounter something dangerous. It's also thematic that obviously a giant squid and octopus could potentially harm your submarine. A great white shark is in the game, but it may not be necessarily big enough to harm your submarine necessarily. Maybe that would be the less thematic, because I would think at least the great white shark could possibly damage your submarine and cause it to pop out a rivet, right? I would think that would at least be more thematic. But honestly, that's like a nitpick once again. So honestly, this is definitely a really good game, really fun and enjoyable. Can't wait to show you guys how to play. In fact, that will be coming up. So stay tuned to my channel. It will be coming up soon. And I'll see you guys when I do the how to play video.